What's going on, guys? This is Chandler Smith, and today I'm going to be talking about everything that you need to know in order to negotiate a real estate deal properly. So I'm going to show you how to negotiate whether you're meeting with them in person on a for sale by owner deal or whether you're working through realtors to get a deal pushed through so that you can know exactly what to do to negotiate properly. So with that being said, let's jump into it. I've had the opportunity to negotiate on literally dozens of real estate deals. And so I decided to put this video together to show you all of the tactics I use in negotiating so that when you do get in a deal, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's through a realtor, you know exactly what to do to make sure that you get the best deal possible. The only thing that I ask of you is that you make sure you apply these principles personally so that you can land that huge deal, and that you make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments. And with all of that being said, let's jump into the first thing I want to teach you with a negotiation, and that is building rapport. And I know a lot of you are saying, Chandler, well, what if I'm using a realtor and they're using a realtor? How can I really build rapport? And I'll tell you now, I'm going to get into that. But for a minute, I'm going to talk about a for sale by owner situation. And anytime I'm dealing with someone that is selling their own home, they're not using a realtor, I make sure that I make a good connection with them. And so there are a couple rules I'm going to teach you that you need to follow. First off, I'm going to talk about some salesmanship things that are going to help you. And those are, you need to make sure that you smile a lot. You need to make sure that you head nod and get them to say yes and agree with you. And you need to make sure that you slow down your voice. The last thing you want to come off as is a fast talker, someone that's just really quick talker, trying to wheel and deal, because a lot of times that will turn people off and they will worry that you're trying to take advantage of them. You want to make sure that you come off as confident, but also as humble when you're doing these interactions, because the more humble and genuine you are, the easier it's going to be to get them to connect with you. And you want to make sure that you get that connection. So when I'm getting to know someone, I'm going to make sure that I'm asking them about their property, why they bought it, why they're selling it, what their plans are for their future, on why they're making this transition. And you've got to be careful with some of those deeper questions because you don't want to be prying to where they're uncomfortable, but you want to get a good conversation going. A lot of times I'll find people that they know that I also know in our town, and we'll shoot the breeze about that for a minute. I'm working extremely hard to get a connection with them. And why I'm doing this, I'm also making sure that I build up value in their property. At this point, I'm not tearing it down. I'm saying things like, man, this property is incredible. Wow, you've really got it in a great place of town. Holy cow, you've been able to land incredible tenants. It's incredible that you fixed that roof. It's in great shape. I can't believe all this good work that you've done. You really seem to know what you're doing. I want to make them feel like the professional and feel like they've made the right decisions. I also want to say something along the lines of, man, it really is a seller's market too. You're so smart selling right now. I'm just in a situation where I want to get into more real estate and I don't have something this valuable to sell like you do, or something along those lines where I'm really building them up and everything I'm saying is true. It really is. You want to make that connection. You want to make them feel comfortable, and then you want to listen. If they want to take the conversation somewhere, hear them out, agree with them, and get that connection. The big reason that people use realtors, or that realtors were put in place, is to eliminate that connection. And the reason for it is when you have a connection or a relationship with someone, if one person knows how to use that to their advantage, then they're going to come out a lot better in that deal. Because when you get an emotional connection with someone, a lot of times you would do things for that person that you wouldn't do otherwise if you were working through a realtor. And so what you need to be careful about is they could get you to do something that you might be uncomfortable with, but you're comfortable because you like them and trust them. So you need to make sure that you know where your numbers are at, where you need to get the property, and that you hold firm to that. However, you want to make this connection so that you can help them understand where you need to be, and a lot of times get them to come down lower on the price than they would because of that connection that you've made. The big thing that I don't want you to do is make that connection and then make a poor purchase because you're emotionally invested in that person and they talk you into buying something that you shouldn't have. You need to use it the other way, and not necessarily to take advantage of them, but that connection will help you get the best deal possible on this property. Make sure that you drop little bombs that show to them that you've got a lot of strength as a buyer. One of the things that I'll always say is, yeah, I actually use this bank here in town and they're awesome. I can get you a pre-approval letter. I'm actually approved for up to $1 million, and I can send that over just so you know financing is going to be easy. But what I love about them is they've been able to close in under 15 days if I need it. So depending on your situation, if we're able to put something together and you want to close quickly, I can make it happen, and they're awesome to make sure that they push it through quick for us. That's just a quick example where I was able to prove that, first off, I'm approved for a loan, I've got the financing, and that I have a relationship with a bank and that they're willing to move quickly for me. That's going to immediately make them say, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about, and whatever deal we agree to, I know I can count on him. Because as a seller, it's nerve-wracking when you're speaking with someone and you don't know for sure if they can actually afford your property. So immediately you can put that to rest, and it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable thing. It can be something that you drop nonchalantly while you're building that rapport with them. Another thing that I love doing is talking about my past experiences with deals that maybe didn't go so well because the seller was kind of crazy, or with evictions I've had to deal with, or other things that they can relate to, where without saying it, we can both kind of be like, yeah, we're on the same page. Everybody else is crazy, but we're buds and we're going to work through this in a good way. Now, with that being said, you have to be really careful, because I've actually messed this up on a deal and I've regretted it for years. I had a deal about 3 years ago on, I believe it was an 8-plex that I was moving on, and the purchase price was perfect for me. I saw it off market. I reached out to the guy. I connected with him. We were having a conversation and it was going really well. But then I tried to make a connection within my city. And I said, yeah, you might know my dad.
He's actually a lawyer in town.
And the second I said that, it was like he shut down. And the reason that I believe that he shut down is because I think he thought I was kind of using that to say, hey, my dad's a lawyer, so you better watch yourself. Because if you don't do things right, I'm coming at you. Or maybe I came off arrogant because I was saying, hey, my dad's a lawyer, look at me, I'm hotty-totty. Or heck, for all I know, he might have thought that I was using my dad's money to buy these properties and he didn't want to deal with some spoiled little brat. Whatever it was, I pushed it too far and I tried to take it to a personal level and make a connection when there wasn't a connection there. And immediately he switched on me and even got to the point where it was really uncomfortable and he just blew off the deal. Now, maybe he didn't really want to sell it at the end of the day, but that was his trigger and I messed up. So you want to be careful when you're going into more personal connections or conversations, because you don't want to overstep your bounds, because you can immediately ruin that relationship. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, Chandler, you haven't even got into the negotiation yet, and you haven't explained how we would use a realtor to build rapport with them. So I'm going to hit on how to build rapport with a realtor, and then I promise we're going to get into the actual negotiation. But when you're using a realtor, you need to do all of these same things. You just need to coach your realtor to talk to their realtor and say all of these things. And you need to get your realtor to then coach their realtor to say those things to the seller, so that all of this stuff, whether it's the pre-approval letter, whether it's your strength when it comes to the money that you have on hand and your reputation with the bank, to your connections within your city and the other real estate you own. The reason this is so important is you want the seller to know that if they get an accepted offer from you, the deal is going through and it's going to go through quickly, so that if they're faced with a decision between you and someone else at the same price, or even when you're at a worst price for them, that they pick you because they know you're going to be able to go through with the deal. You also could put in a letter with your offer letter that just says, hey, my name's Chandler. I've been doing this for 6 years. I love investing in real estate. I absolutely love your property. It's beautiful. Here's me. Here's what my goal is for the property. Here's why I think we'd be an awesome setup for you. And just kind of share your story in a short letter that builds rapport, builds that connection so that they feel an obligation to you more than someone else. And now that you've built this rapport and you've coached your realtor and you're in a good place, it is time for the fun stuff. And that is the negotiation. A lot of times I think people think that a master negotiator just totally takes advantage of the seller. When I will tell you right now, people know when you're trying to take advantage of them. So you need to find a way to negotiate where everyone involved feels like it is a win-win, and in your heart of hearts, you truly need to believe that it is a win for them because of what you bring to the table in closing quickly, in making sure that you keep your commitments, and in negotiating in a way that it still is going to put them ahead while also putting you ahead. So the one lesson I learned a couple years back when putting in your initial offer, whether you're speaking with them personally or using a realtor, is if it's already an incredible deal, a deal that you don't want to lose, don't be greedy. My dad has a phrase where he says the pig gets fat, but the hog gets slaughtered. And I actually had a deal like this where the deal already with the seller was at a price that I would have killed it on. But I knew they were wanting to sell and wanting to sell quickly, so I went in with a super lowball offer and I offended them and I blew up the deal. Where if I would have just accepted what they wanted for it, I would have made a killing, or even got an extra $5,000 or $10,000 off. I would have gotten a killing without offending them, but I went in way too strong and blew up the deal. So if the numbers work where they're at, don't get greedy. Take the deal and you can find more stuff in inspection to maybe whittle it down, or just negotiate a little bit and make sure that you're not going to offend them. Because on this first offer, you do not want to offend the seller. If they're selling the property for here and you need to pick it up for right here, and you think an offer down here is going to offend them, then you're out of luck anyways. I mean, sometimes you're gonna have to offend people if you've got to get them down to where they need to be. But if they're already at where you need to be, it's not worth the risk of offending them. And I hope that makes sense, because the reality is if they've got the property way overpriced, your first offer needs to be below where you need to pick it up for, even if it's $5,000 or $10,000 below, because they need to feel like you're giving something up. So your first offer has got to be below where you need your numbers to be. But if you've already met your numbers at their current asking price, then don't offend them. And you can choose whether you think you can whittle a little more off, but you've got to decide whether it's worth it to whittle that amount off. So we're going to talk about the example where they're up here and you need the numbers down here. I'm going to offer $5,000 or $10,000 below where I need to be. Now, they're going to come back with a counter, probably somewhere in the middle, and then we're going to go back and forth. And the most important part about the back and forth is justifying where you need to be through your realtor or with them personally. So if I'm meeting with them personally, I'm just going to pull up my sheet and I'm going to say, look, I'd like to get a 15% cash on cash return. That's why I put my offer where it was. But at this point, I have got to get at least a 12% cash on cash return. And the unfortunate part is if I can't get there, then I'm going to be out of luck because this won't be worth buying for me. And honestly, I'm not sure who would find value in that. I'm sure someone might if they don't need that kind of return, but most investors, that's where they need to be. Now, a lot of times when I'm negotiating, I'm using numbers that might be a little bit over the top so that they feel like it hurts when I give in. So I'm going to justify my purchase price at that 12% cash on cash return, but I might have bumped my expenses just a little bit, or I might be happy with taking a 10% because they're going to counter just a little bit above, and you need to make them feel like they got a win, even though in reality you got them where you need them to be. Now, I know that's a lot that I've thrown at you, but at the end of the day, go on that back and forth with offer and counter offer, justify your price, and make sure that you overshoot it, but they feel like it hurts when you accept whatever offer they've given you, because they know, wow, he needed his numbers here, but because of my connection with him, he was even willing to take it for worse than what he wanted. And so I think this feels like a fair deal. Another principle I learned with this is a lot of times if you just accept what someone offers, they feel like they gave too much and there's a risk of them backing off. So I would say you always want to counteroffer. And so if they're already out where you need to be, go in and just ask for a little bit, all right? And if they say no, then accept it, but at least then they feel like you gave a little bit of fight and they weren't just giving it away. So that's how you do the back and forth with the offer and the counter offer, and it's so important to justify your price. Explain yourself, help them understand whether it's through a realtor or not, but recognize that the negotiation is not over. And that's why a lot of times I want to put in an offer before I've ever seen the property. So I'm going to look at their listing, or I'm going to have driven by the property. I don't want to go in the property when I give an offer. I want to make my offer based on what I think is inside a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, or what I think is inside a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. Because then in my mind, I'm going to justify, hey, this is what I think it's worth for what I think is inside. I'm going to get it under contract. Then I'm going to get inside the home. That's when I'm going to do the inspection. And then I am totally justified in saying, look, when I did my numbers and when we negotiated, this is what I thought I was getting. But these are the things I found within the property, and unfortunately, that changes my situation. I found that the water heater was about to go out. I found that the carpet is wrecked in this room. I found that I need to repaint this bedroom and even redo this bathroom. And I'm going to put together a laundry list of all of the things that are not right for what I originally thought when we agreed to a commitment. Now, I know a lot of people might say, Chandler, that sounds shady or dishonest. No, it's not shady or dishonest at all. Because if I go into the property and it is spotless and it is what I thought I was getting, then I'm done. I'm good to go. But with most of the properties I purchased, they were built in the 70s or the 80s. They're older properties, and I know I'm going to find stuff that needs to get fixed. And so if I make an offer without having been in the property, I've made the connection with the person, it gives me so much leverage to then renegotiate while we're doing the inspection period so that I can get them down even lower, and then I can really capitalize on a good return on the property. This is another reason it's so important to make sure that you get a good inspection period and that you really dive into that inspection. You make sure you're checking the roof, that you've got a real inspector going and checking the full interior, that you're checking the drain lines out, that you're making sure everything is done properly for this property. And if it's not, you go back to them and you put it all on a list and you say, these are all of the things that I was not expecting, that I need fixed. And a lot of times I don't want them to go through and fix all the things on the list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put what I think each of those things would cost me to take care of. And I'm going to say, look, I know you probably don't want to do the work. I don't want you to do the work. So if you can write me a check for this much at closing, then we're going to be good to go. Now, this is good for a couple reasons. First off, if they're giving you a credit back at closing, that drastically lowers what you need in your closing costs, which is going to shoot up what your cash on cash return could be, especially if some of these things are things that don't need to be done immediately. For instance, if you need new windows and it's the middle of the winter and you're doing okay and you can say, you know what, we can wait 6 months or a year to do the windows, that's putting your cash situation in a much better place so that you've got more money in reserves and you're more confident going into the property because you're using less money as a down payment. So with those reserves, you've got the flexibility to go with some vacancy while you're trying to raise rents and get new tenants in, or to make the fixes that you need to justify higher rents, or to just have that money sitting there so that you're not worried about your cash situation once you've purchased this new property. A lot of times when I'm getting these bids, I'm calling the most expensive flooring place and the most expensive painting place and having them bid it out so that I can send them a very large bid. So even though I might think, hey, I could get this done for $20,000, I can find bids to show that it's going to cost $30,000 or $40,000. Now, I'm not doing this to be dishonest or to take advantage. The reason I'm doing this is I want to anchor high on that counteroffer. I want to anchor high when I go through all of these issues so they feel like there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of expenses, and so that when they counter, they're going to say, look, I wasn't expecting on an extra 40 grand. However, because it is going to cost so much, I recognize there's some issues. What if I meet you halfway and I cover $20,000 worth of it? And then I'm in a place where I'm like, hey, I'm pumped because that was all I needed anyways, and now I can actually fix the things that need to be fixed. Now, again, if you're grasping for things that aren't actually there and you're putting in extra money and putting yourself at risk of offending them, at this point, it's actually okay. Because if you do offend them, it doesn't matter. They're just going to say no to that, and you can still go forward on your purchase price. So I would say always ask for things. However, your odds of getting them to accept what you're asking for are going to be a lot higher if you're just putting things on your list that make sense to them. If you're throwing in total crap that's made up, first of all, that's dishonest. And second of all, they're going to catch that and they're not going to give you anything out of spite because they're going to know that it's garbage. So again, if the deal already works, I would still nitpick on a couple little things if they're actually there and see if you can get a little more, but you're not at as high of risk of losing the deal at this point, because if they say no, you can still accept the deal. So now that you've done your first offer, they've countered, you've gone back and forth, you've got it under contract, you've done your inspection, you've sent in what you want fixed after doing the inspection and actually getting inside the property. I'm hoping that at this point you've got them right where you need to be on your numbers, or hopefully even better than you were expecting, and now it's time to close. And you need to make sure if you run someone through this, that you follow through with your commitment, that you really do have that financing and you can close, because especially if you're in a smaller town and you talk a big talk and then you can't come through with it when you just nitpick them to death and got them down to an awesome purchase price and your loan goes bottoms up or something else does, that's your reputation. And you can't in good faith or with confidence go into your next deal and promise these things when they're not true. So make sure that you follow through with your commitment and that you purchase the property and you put yourself in an awesome situation. Now, obviously, if you find crap in the inspection that makes it not worth going through with, then of course, blow up the deal, and that's not on you. But I would work really hard if I was you to keep a good reputation, because so often real estate investors talk and you can end up in a situation where everybody knows you're a scumbag. So follow this process, keep your integrity, keep that rapport throughout all of it. But as you use that relationship you created and you follow these steps, you should be able to land some huge deals at a great price and be able to build a huge passive income for yourself. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you push the like button and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the future videos. Thanks guys, have a great day.